Dinner was in the oven, family in the living room, and I was in the kitchen with him. He stood behind me, too close, too still. "Don't make a sound," he said. It wasn't lust. It wasn't love. It was something far more dangerous. And it changed the way I looked at all of them. Especially him. Please share this video, subscribe to the channel, like and comment if you've ever flirted with danger, in an apron. If I had known that lasagna would be the beginning of my unraveling, I would have ordered takeout. It was a Sunday evening in Austin, and the Monroe house was buzzing. Luke's sisters had come into town, the nieces were running around with toys, and his father, Thomas Monroe, had offered to help me in the kitchen. I should have said no. But I didn't. I never do when it comes to him. Thomas is a man who commands a room. Ex-military, all structure and silence, with eyes that pierce and a voice like dry bourbon. Luke doesn't see it. No one sees it. But I do. He steps behind me as I stir the sauce, his breath just close enough. "Don't make a sound," he murmurs. I freeze. Not in fear. Not in arousal. In confusion. What did he mean? I didn't turn around. "Lasagna's almost ready," I said, keeping my voice steady. He chuckled lowly. "Smells good. You always make things taste better than they look." That line should have been innocent. But from him, it wasn't. Dinner went as usual. The kids complained about spinach. Luke complimented the cheese pull. And Thomas, ever the patriot, gave a little toast about family. But under the table, I could feel his foot slightly brush mine. Coincidence? That night, when I lay beside Luke, his back turned like always, I stared at the ceiling, heart racing. Was I imagining this? Or was Thomas Monroe looking at me like a secret he'd already decided to keep? The next morning, I found myself glancing at the security camera monitor above the kitchen sink. One of Luke's brothers had installed it when their mom passed, something about keeping everyone safe. Funny how unsafe I felt now, and not because of strangers. Thomas came in just after 8, claiming he'd left his travel mug in the kitchen. He hadn't. It was on the dining table. I know because I saw it. "Morning," he said, his voice like gravel and warmth. "You always up this early?" I asked, trying not to sound defensive. Or breathless. He smiled. That same unreadable smile. Old habits die hard. Then came the glance. Not a stare. Not a leer. Just a pause. His eyes scanned my face, down to my hands washing the dishes, and back up again. A silence fell between us. I dropped the sponge. He picked it up. Handed it to me. Fingers touched. Brief, but enough. Luke walked in just seconds later, stretching and yawning like it was any other Monday. "You guys already up?" "Smells like detergent and secrets," he joked, planting a sleepy kiss on my cheek. I laughed too loudly. Thomas didn't laugh at all. Later, at work, I kept replaying it. The brush of fingers. The way he looked at me like he knew something I hadn't told even myself. Was he testing me? Or was he broken in the same way I feared I might be? Either way, the game had begun. By Wednesday, the Monroe house felt less like a home and more like a slow-burning bonfire I couldn't walk away from. Luke's family was staying through the weekend, which meant more dinners, more morning coffee, more silent stares from Thomas. And me, caught in the middle like a moth mesmerized by a flame. I found a photo album on the coffee table that afternoon while tidying up. It was full of Luke's childhood memories, baseball games, birthdays, beach trips. But as I flipped further, there was a page that stopped me cold. Thomas, maybe mid-30s, in uniform. Sunlight in his eyes, a rare smile caught on film. Behind him, a man. Not Luke's mom. Younger. Hand on Thomas's shoulder. Too intimate for just friends. "That's from Fort Bragg," Thomas said, his voice catching me off guard. He stood behind me again. I looked up. "He was important to you." He didn't answer right away. "You remind me of him. Not the way you look. Just the way you carry silence." I closed the album. "Is that a compliment or a warning?" He leaned against the wall. "Depends on whether you're listening." The air buzzed with tension. Not anger. Not even flirtation. Just a truth that neither of us wanted to name. That night, Luke told me he might take a job out in Denver. 6 months away. Better pay. I nodded and smiled like it was great news. But inside, I heard a door creak open. Not opportunity. Not betrayal. Temptation. Thursday morning began with shattered glass. Literally. I was heading down the back staircase with a mug in each hand when I slipped on the worn runner. One step missed, and I tumbled, hitting my elbow hard against the banister before landing sideways on the floor. The mugs didn't survive. Neither did my dignity. "Hey, are you okay?" Thomas's voice rang from the top of the stairs. Moments later, he was kneeling beside me, one hand on my back, the other checking for blood. "Let me see," he said, lifting my arm gently. "You're gonna bruise." "It's nothing. Just clumsy." He shook his head. "No, it's the carpet. Been meaning to fix that. Help me out." He helped me up, steady but close, too close. His hand lingered on my waist as he guided me to the kitchen, sitting me down on a stool. "Ice pack." "I'm fine," I muttered. "You're not." His tone softened. "You're always pretending you are, even when it hurts." Our eyes met and held. It was the longest 30 seconds of my life. "Thomas," I said, my voice dry, "what are we doing?" He didn't flinch. "You know what we're not doing? Talking." Just then, Luke's sister walked in, carrying a tray of laundry. "Everything okay in here?" We both jumped back like we were caught doing something more than making eye contact. "Yeah," Thomas said. He slipped. "I'm helping." "Be careful," she said, eyeing us suspiciously. As she left, Thomas turned back to me. "You're not crazy. And neither am I." I didn't respond, because I wasn't sure which scared me more, the fact that I agreed, or the fact that I wanted to know how far this would go. Friday night, a storm rolled in hard over Austin. The skies opened up, thunder growling like a hungry dog, and rain pelted the windows so loud it muffled every thought I tried to have. Luke had gone out with his brothers, something about watching the game and beer specials. The house felt quieter without him. Or maybe it was just the sound of anticipation. I was in the kitchen again, this time making tea, when Thomas walked in, shaking rain from his jacket. Water beaded on his forearms. The t-shirt clung to him, dark and transparent. He looked like a scene from a movie no one dares admit they rewatch. "Storm's worse than I thought," he said. "You made it back just in time." He didn't reply. Just walked past me, his hand brushing my lower back. It stayed there a second too long. "Thomas," I whispered, but it sounded like a confession. "I know," he said. "I know." There, in the kitchen, with the storm raging and the tea forgotten, he stepped closer. "You want to know how far this goes?" "So do I." His hands cradled my face. Gentle. Searching. I let my eyes fall shut. But the kiss never came. Instead, he rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "Not like this. Not under this roof. Not while your heart's still waiting on someone else's door." It wasn't rejection. It was mercy. He walked away, leaving the scent of rain and restraint hanging in the air. That night, I cried for reasons I didn't fully understand. Not for what didn't happen, but for what almost did. The days after that storm blurred like a watercolor left out in the rain. Thomas and I moved around each other like the kitchen was too small, like our thoughts were louder than our footsteps. And Luke. He returned that night smelling of whiskey and chicken wings, collapsing onto the couch like nothing had shifted. But something had. God, something had. I caught myself checking the doorway every time I heard boots. I started brewing 2 cups of tea instead of 1. And when Thomas wasn't around, I felt it, like missing a limb I didn't know I'd grown. One afternoon, I found him on the back porch. His toolbox was open, hands busy fixing a piece of loose siding, but his mind was somewhere far off. I stepped outside, pretending the sun didn't sting my eyes. "You're avoiding me," I said, leaning against the railing. He didn't look up. "You needed space. You gave me silence instead." Now he looked up. "You needed that too." I crossed my arms. "Stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Knowing exactly what I need. It's infuriating." His mouth curved, not quite a smile, more like a memory. "Sorry." Silence again. The wind picked up, leaves dancing between us. "I haven't told Luke," I finally said. He stood, wiped his hands on his jeans. "Told him what?" "That I'm not in love with him anymore." Thomas's throat bobbed. "Then what are you still doing here?" I stepped forward, trying to remember who I was before everything got blurry. Thomas walked past me, stopped at the door, then turned. "You don't have to remember. You just have to decide who you want to be now." That night, I told Luke. We sat at the dining table, The one we picked out together when we still believed we had forever. He laughed at first, a disbelieving kind of laugh. Then his face folded in on itself, like watching the structure of someone unravel. "You're in love with him," he said flatly. "I don't know what I'm in," I answered honestly. "But I know what I'm not. And that's in love with you." Luke nodded slowly, the hurt settling deep into his eyes. "Then go." I did. I stayed in a motel for 3 nights. I walked along the river each morning, wondering what courage really looked like. Turns out, it's not a grand speech or a passionate kiss. Sometimes courage is walking back into a room you're scared you've already ruined. On the 4th day, I knocked on Thomas's door. He opened it like he'd been expecting me. "I ended it," I said. He nodded. "I know. You always know." He smiled softly. "Only when it comes to you." I stepped inside, the door closing behind me like the end of a chapter one didn't want to reread. We didn't rush. There was no breathless urgency, no soundtrack swelling in the background. Just 2 men, sitting across from each other, finally choosing the truth over the comfort of pretending. "I don't know where this will go," I said. "I don't need to know," he replied. He reached for my hand. This time I didn't let go.